And yes, so now the next slide. What are the conditions for perception in the external world? One of the key defining features of Kantian philosophy is the distinction between noumena and phenomena. Phenomena can be interpreted as the empirical objects that we perceive, and noumena as the unknowable objects that are only possibly known through reason or not knowable at all. And there are two main types of noumena. You have your negative noumena and also positive noumena, which I'll touch on in a second. So when most people say the word noumena, they're referring to negative noumena, which is synonymous and can be used interchangeably with the word things in themselves. And negative noumena are basically objects prior to perception, or at least empirical knowledge, and are the passive essences from which perceived phenomena is based upon. And a popular example of this can be the idea of a sausage factory or something. So you have a sausage, but you don't know where the sausage comes from. It can be from a sausage factory or maybe from a hot dog vendor or somewhere else. And the origin of that sausage can be considered the negative noumena. But then the sausage as you perceive it is the phenomena. And the second type is positive noumena. And Kant thought that positive noumena was not certain to exist and are supposedly only known through the intellectual intuition, and they denote the active essences rather than the passive essences of the negative noumena, and they concern the changes in objects rather than the objects themselves. And so from this, you could link it to phenomenology, at least Husserlian phenomenology, and argue that Husserlian phenomenology concerns itself mainly with the negative noumena, which is the things themselves, or the things in themselves. But Kantianism concerns itself more with positive noumena. And positive noumena is also synonymous with the idea of pure reason in Kant. And pure reason is basically the governing order of empirical perception and can also be used interchangeably with divine reason. And this links well with the idea of positive noumena and the intellectual intuition. And Kant thought that only a divine intellect, like a supreme being, omnipotent God, could have this intellectual intuition to understand the changes in beings. But there was this scholar of Kant called Reinhold who thought that intellectual intuition is present in all of us because it is in the definition of pure reason to be contained within us. So Reinhold emphasizes the divine in us rather than the divine above, or rather the Christian God, which Kant made a famous argument for in his book, The Only Argument for the Existence of a God. And the final condition in the external world are the manifolds. Manifolds are basically the disorganized array of appearances that are presented to the mind and then organized by the mind. By appearances, I refer to phenomena before it is subjectively perceived. And so it becomes an objective representation. And manifolds are basically how empirical objects are presented to the mind before the mind recognizes or categorizes or understands or identifies any of it based on a priori knowledge. And yes, so these are manifolds, and we'll go into a bit more depth about how they're organized later.